I don't date black women, the cold Korean mafia boss said, until he met the 30-year-old single mother who stole his heart. The kiss was supposed to mean nothing. Just another transaction in Kang Jun-suk's carefully curated life. Another beautiful woman pressed against the wall of his penthouse. Her perfume expensive and forgettable. But halfway through, he opened his eyes and saw his own reflection in the window behind her, and felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. He pulled away, leaving the woman confused and angry, and walked to the balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. 43 years old, more money than 3 generations could spend, power that made politicians sweat, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt his own heartbeat quicken for anything real. That was the night before Sarah walked into his life. The night before everything he believed about himself shattered like glass on marble floors. His phone buzzed. Another deal closed. Another enemy neutralized. Another woman's text message he'd ignore. Jun-suk poured himself whiskey that cost more than most cars and thought about his father's funeral 15 years ago. How he'd stood in the rain and promised himself he'd never be weak enough to love anything that could be taken from him. He'd kept that promise. Women came and went like seasons, their faces blurring together into one long parade of transaction and temporary pleasure. His associates knew his type. Pale skin, delicate features, women who looked like they belonged in glass cases. Safe, controlled, predictable. 3 months ago, at an exclusive club where membership cost 6 figures annually, someone had asked him a question that seemed innocent enough at the time. The man was drunk, bold with expensive liquor, and apparently tired of the usual small talk about stocks and politics. Jun-suk, you ever dated a black woman? The table went silent. Ice clinked in glasses. Someone coughed. Jun-suk didn't even look up from his drink. His voice flat and cold as winter steel. I don't date black women. No explanation. No apology. Just fact, delivered with the same casual certainty he used when ordering executions or closing billion-won deals. The conversation moved on quickly, everyone understanding that some topics weren't worth pursuing with a man who could end careers with a phone call. No one questioned him. No one dared. That was 3 months before Sarah Bennett walked into his mansion with cleaning supplies and a sleeping child strapped to her back, before his entire world tilted on its axis and never quite straightened again. Sarah was 30 years old and exhausted in ways that lived deeper than bone. She'd left Chicago 18 months ago with nothing but a suitcase, a 4-year-old son named Daniel, and memories that still woke her screaming in the middle of the night. Her husband Marcus had been shot in an alley 3 blocks from their apartment, his blood mixing with rain on dirty pavement. His last words lost to the sound of sirens that arrived too late. The police called it robbery. Sarah knew better. Marcus had been asking questions, digging into things that powerful people wanted buried. But she couldn't prove it, and even if she could, who would believe a young black woman with no money and no connections? So she ran, took her settlement money from Marcus's life insurance, applied for every job in Seoul she could find online, and disappeared into a city where nobody knew her name or her grief. The cleaning agency hired her without asking too many questions. They needed workers willing to take overnight shifts at the mansions of the wealthy, and Sarah needed to be invisible. Daniel adapted the way children do, learning Korean words from cartoons, making friends at the subsidized daycare. Sarah worked 3 jobs and slept 4 hours a night and tried not to think about the life she'd left behind. The man she'd loved, the future that had died with him in that alley. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The night they met, Sarah was covering for another cleaner who'd called in sick. The agency dispatcher gave her an address in Gangnam, a penthouse that required security clearance and a non-disclosure agreement she had to sign before entering. The pay was triple her usual rate. She didn't ask questions, couldn't afford to. Daniel had been coughing for 3 days, and she needed money for the doctor. She arrived at 11 p.m., Daniel asleep in the carrier on her back because the daycare was closed and her neighbor wasn't answering her phone. The security guard at the entrance looked at her like she was dirt on his expensive shoes, but let her through after checking her credentials 3 times. The elevator ride to the top floor took 45 seconds that felt like an hour. Sarah adjusted Daniel's weight, whispered a prayer she didn't fully believe in anymore, and stepped into a penthouse that cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. The place was all marble and glass and cold modern edges, the kind of space that made you afraid to breathe too loudly. Sarah set down her supplies, checked that Daniel was still sleeping, and began cleaning the living room. She'd gotten through 2 rooms when she heard footsteps behind her, precise and deliberate. She turned slowly, her heart hammering, and saw him for the first time. Kang Jun-suk stood in the doorway wearing a black suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, his expression unreadable, his eyes sharp enough to cut. He was handsome in that dangerous way some men are, all sharp angles and controlled power, the kind of face that made women stupid and men careful. Sarah had learned long ago not to be stupid. "You're new," he said in Korean, his voice flat. Sarah bowed slightly the way she'd practiced. "Yes, sir. I'm covering for Min-young tonight. I apologize if there's any inconvenience." He moved closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne and whiskey. His eyes flicked to the carrier on her back, where Daniel's small hand was visible, fingers curled in sleep. "You brought a child." It wasn't a question. Sarah straightened her spine, meeting his eyes for just a moment before lowering her gaze. That moment, though, that single second of eye contact hit Jun-suk like a physical force. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't trying to seduce him or impress him or manipulate him. She was just tired, just human, just there. It unsettled him in ways he didn't have words for. "My babysitter canceled, sir. He won't be any trouble. He sleeps through everything." Jun-suk should have sent her away, should have called the agency and demanded someone else. Instead, he found himself saying, "The bedroom at the end of the hall has a couch. Put him there." Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "Sir, I couldn't. I don't repeat myself." She bowed again, deeper this time, and carried Daniel down the hall. Jun-suk watched her go, wondering what the hell he was doing. Why this woman with her sleeping child and worn shoes had just made him break his own rules. He poured another whiskey and told himself it was mercy, convenience, nothing more. He was lying to himself, and somewhere deep down he knew it. Sarah laid Daniel on the leather couch, surrounded him with cushions so he wouldn't roll off, and went back to cleaning. Her hands shook slightly as she scrubbed the kitchen counters. Something about the man in the other room made her skin prickle with awareness. Not quite fear, but not quite comfort either. She'd cleaned houses for wealthy people before. They usually ignored her, treating her like furniture that happened to move. This man watched her. She could feel his eyes tracking her movements, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. She was cleaning the dining room when it happened. A wine glass, perched too close to the edge of the table, toppled as she reached past it. The sound of it shattering against the marble floor was obscenely loud in the quiet penthouse. Red wine spread across white stone like blood, like accusation, like the end of everything. Sarah dropped to her knees immediately, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might vomit. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for it. I'll..." "Stop." His voice cut through her panic. She froze, still on her knees, waiting for the rage, the threats, the call to the agency that would end her employment. Instead, Jun-suk crouched down beside her, close enough that she could see the faint scar on his left hand, the precise way his suit jacket creased at the elbows. "Look at me." She raised her eyes slowly, expecting anger. What she saw instead was curiosity, intense and focused, like he was seeing her for the first time, like she was real. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah, sir. Sarah Bennett." "Sarah." He tested the name on his tongue, the English syllables slightly awkward in his Korean accent. "You're American." "Yes, sir." "Why are you here?" "In Seoul, cleaning houses at midnight." The question was too personal, too direct. Sarah should have deflected, should have given some generic answer about opportunities or adventure. Instead, she heard herself saying, "I'm running from a ghost." The words hung in the air between them. Jun-suk's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition maybe, or understanding. He stood, offered her his hand. She stared at it for 3 heartbeats before taking it, his palm warm and calloused in ways that surprised her. He pulled her to her feet with easy strength. "Leave the glass. Someone else will clean it." "But how much does the agency pay you for nights like this?" Sarah named the figure, her cheeks burning with shame at how small it sounded in a place like this. Jun-suk pulled out his wallet, counted bills that were worth more than she made in a month, and held them out. I'm hiring you directly. 3 nights a week. Same rate. You bring your son if you need to. No one else comes here. Sarah stared at the money, then at him, her mind racing through all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Strange man. Empty penthouse. Too much money for simple cleaning. But Daniel needed medicine. Needed food. Needed a mother who wasn't breaking under the weight of survival. Why? She whispered. Jun-suk didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, really looked, and realized he didn't know why. Just that sending her away felt wrong in a way he couldn't articulate. Because you didn't beg, he finally said. You broke something expensive and you didn't beg or cry or try to use your child to manipulate sympathy. You just apologized and offered to fix it. That's rare. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing in his dining room with a fistful of cash, and the uncomfortable feeling that she'd just made a deal she didn't fully understand. Behind her, Daniel cried out softly in his sleep, and she went to comfort him, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and drop a comment telling us what you think will happen next. Your engagement helps us bring you more stories like this. That first month, Sarah cleaned Jun-suk's penthouse 3 nights a week while he worked in his office or took phone calls in languages she didn't understand. Daniel slept on the leather couch, occasionally waking to ask for water or the bathroom. Jun-suk watched them both with an intensity that should have been creepy but somehow wasn't. He was studying them, she realized, the way a scientist studies something that doesn't fit known categories. On the 4th week, Daniel woke up crying from a nightmare, calling for his father. Sarah rushed to comfort him, but before she could reach the bedroom, Jun-suk was there, crouching beside the couch with an awkwardness that would have been funny in any other circumstance. Hey! He said softly in English, the word careful and unpracticed. Hey, it's okay. Daniel stared at him with wide, frightened eyes. Sarah appeared in the doorway, frozen by the surreal image of this dangerous man trying to comfort her son with hands that had probably killed people. I'm sorry, she said quickly. He has bad dreams sometimes. We'll go. No. Jun-suk stood, ran a hand through his hair in the first gesture of uncertainty she'd ever seen from him. Does he need something? Water? Food? He needs his father, Sarah said, the words escaping before she could stop them. But his father is dead, so he'll have to settle for me. The bitterness in her voice surprised them both. Jun-suk's expression shifted, something almost like recognition crossing his features. How did he die? He asked quietly. Murdered. In an alley. 3 blocks from our apartment. Sarah picked up Daniel, held him against her chest. The police said robbery, but Marcus wasn't stupid enough to walk dark alleys with his wallet out. He was investigating something. I don't know what. He wouldn't tell me because he wanted to protect me. She laughed, sharp and broken. Look how well that worked out. Jun-suk was silent for a long moment. Then, you think whoever killed him might come for you. It wasn't a question. Sarah met his eyes, and for the first time since Marcus died, she told someone the truth. I know they're looking. I get calls sometimes. Blocked numbers, nobody speaking. I see the same car outside Daniel's daycare twice in 1 week. Maybe I'm paranoid. Maybe grief makes you see monsters everywhere. But yes, I think someone is looking, and I don't know if I'm fast enough or smart enough to stay ahead of them. Why didn't you go to the police? Because the man who answered when I tried was the same man I saw leaving the alley the night Marcus died. The words fell like stones into still water. Jun-suk's jaw tightened, and Sarah saw something in his expression that made her take a step back. Not anger at her. Anger for her. The distinction mattered. You're safe here, he said, and it sounded like a promise. I don't care who's looking for you. They won't find you here. Sarah should have questioned that confidence, should have asked what he meant, what kind of man made promises about safety with such absolute certainty. But she was tired, and Daniel was crying, and for just a moment she wanted to believe someone could protect them. Thank you, she whispered. Jun-suk nodded once and left the room. Sarah rocked Daniel back to sleep and tried not to think about how dangerous it was to trust anyone, especially a man who looked at the world like it was his to command. But that night, she slept better than she had in months, and if part of her knew she was falling into something she couldn't control, well, she was too exhausted to care. Over the following weeks, their arrangement shifted into something neither of them had names for. Sarah cleaned, but Jun-suk started timing his work to be around when she was there. He'd pour 2 glasses of whiskey instead of 1, leaving one on the counter near where she worked. She never asked if it was for her. Just drank it slowly while folding laundry or organizing his absurdly expensive closet. They talked in fragments, conversations that started and stopped like hesitant music. "You speak English well," she said one night. "Spent 3 years in New York. Business school and other things." "Other things?" He smiled, sharp and humorless. "Things your son shouldn't hear about." She studied him over the rim of her glass. "You're dangerous." "Yes, but not to me." "No, not to you." The certainty in his voice sent warmth through her chest that had nothing to do with the whiskey. She changed the subject quickly, afraid of what she might say if she didn't. Another night, Daniel woke up and wandered into the living room where Jun-suk was working on his laptop. Sarah found them 20 minutes later, Daniel sitting on the couch eating ice cream, while Jun-suk showed him a video of Korean street food vendors on his phone. Her son was laughing. Actually laughing. She couldn't remember the last time she'd heard that sound. "He said he was hungry," Jun-suk said defensively, like she'd caught him committing a crime. "I didn't know what kids eat." "Ice cream is perfect," Sarah said softly. "Thank you." Their eyes met and held. Something passed between them, electric and terrifying, and they both looked away at the same moment. But the city that never slept was watching. Jun-suk's world was built on control and fear, and there were people in that world who noticed when their boss started acting differently. When he fired 3 men for making a crude comment about the black cleaning lady. When he canceled a meeting because it conflicted with his new cleaning schedule. When his second-in-command Min-ho walked into the penthouse unexpectedly and found Sarah there, comfortable and unafraid in a space where most people trembled. "Who is she?" Min-ho asked later, cornering Jun-suk in his private office. "She cleans my house." "She's more than that. Don't lie to me. I've known you 20 years. Jun-suk's silence was answer enough. Min-ho leaned back in his chair, studying his friend and boss with concerned eyes. "You said you'd never do this. Never get involved. Never care." "I know what I said." "Then what changed?" Jun-suk thought about Sarah's hands, strong and scarred from work. The way she never asked him for anything. The sound of Daniel's laugh. The terrifying realization that he looked forward to Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday nights in ways that had nothing to do with having a clean home. "Everything," he finally said. "Everything changed. Are you hooked yet?" Comment, "I'm still watching." And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. This story is just getting started. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. Jun-suk started buying groceries he didn't need. Things he'd seen Sarah glance at in the Korean cooking shows Daniel liked watching. Children's books in English appeared on the coffee table. The spare bedroom that had been empty for 5 years suddenly had a bed, proper curtains, toys that Daniel found one morning with a note in Jun-suk's precise handwriting. He should sleep properly. Sarah should have been scared by the intimacy of it, the way this dangerous man was weaving himself into their lives. Instead, she found herself looking forward to those nights, to the comfortable silence that fell between them while Daniel slept, to the conversations that grew longer and more honest as weeks turned into months. "Why did you come to Seoul?" Jun-suk asked one night. They were sitting on his balcony. The city spread out below them like captured stars. Daniel was asleep inside. The air smelled like rain. Because it was far away. Because nobody here knew Marcus, so nobody would look at me with pity. Because I thought maybe if I ran far enough, I could outrun the guilt. Guilt for what? Sarah's hands tightened around her glass. For being alive when he's dead. For not stopping him from whatever investigation got him killed. For bringing Daniel into a world where fathers die in alleys and mothers clean houses at midnight to afford medicine. She laughed bitterly. "Take your pick." Jun-suk was quiet for a moment. Then, "My father was shot in front of me when I was 12. Right hand took over the business. Raised me to be what I am now. Taught me that love was weakness. That caring about anything made you vulnerable." He paused. For 30 years, I believed him. And now? He turned to look at her, and Sarah's breath caught at the raw honesty in his expression. Now I think he was a coward. Building walls isn't strength. It's fear dressed up as power. What changed your mind? You, he said simply. You and your son showing up in my life like you had every right to be there. You're not afraid of me. You should be, but you're not. And Daniel, his voice softened. Daniel looks at me like I'm just a person. Not a boss, not someone to fear. Just someone who gives him ice cream and teaches him bad Korean words. Sarah laughed despite herself. Wait, what bad Korean words? Minho walked in yesterday while I was teaching him how to order food. Some of the phrases were informal. Jun Suk. He's 4. He won't remember. They were both laughing now, and then they weren't because suddenly the space between them felt charged with something neither could ignore. Jun Suk reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. His fingers were gentle in ways that contradicted everything she knew about him. I don't know what I'm doing, he said quietly. I've never. This isn't something I know how to do. What isn't? Care about someone. Want someone around not for what they can give me but just because they're there. Look forward to seeing them. Imagine a future that includes them. Sarah's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. Jun Suk, you said you don't date black women. His jaw tightened. I said a lot of ignorant things because I was scared and stupid and hiding behind prejudice instead of admitting I was empty inside. I don't care what color your skin is, Sarah. I care that you're you. That you're real in ways I'd forgotten people could be real. She should have pulled away. Should have remembered that he was dangerous, that she was vulnerable, that getting involved with someone like him was playing with fire. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him, soft and tentative. A question more than a statement. He answered by pulling her closer, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapping around her waist. The kiss deepened, became urgent, became something that felt like falling and flying at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sarah rested her forehead against his. This is crazy, she whispered. Completely insane, he agreed. We should stop. Probably. Neither of them moved. Inside, Daniel called out in his sleep, and they separated reluctantly. Sarah went to check on her son, and Jun Suk stood on the balcony wondering what the hell he'd just started and knowing there was no going back now. But in Seoul's underground, in the places where power was traded in whispers and violence, people had noticed Kang Jun Suk's distraction. And in Chicago, a man named Victor Chan was having a very interesting conversation with a very scared police officer about a woman who disappeared 18 months ago. A woman whose dead husband had gotten too close to something that should have stayed buried. Her name was Sarah Bennett, the officer said, hands shaking around his beer. She left the city right after her husband died. I heard she went international. Where? Victor's voice was casual, bored almost, but the officer knew better. Seoul, South Korea. Found out through a friend at immigration. Victor smiled, cold and reptilian. Seoul. How interesting. Make some calls. Find out where exactly she is. I have friends there who owe me favors. The trap was being set, and neither Sarah nor Jun Suk knew they were walking into it. Not yet. The next few weeks were stolen moments between danger and domesticity. Jun Suk started coming home earlier, timing his schedule around when Sarah would arrive. They'd eat dinner together, the three of them, Daniel chattering in his mix of English and broken Korean, while Jun Suk taught him how to use chopsticks and Sarah pretended not to notice how natural it all felt. Too natural. Dangerously natural. One evening, Jun Suk came home with shopping bags full of clothes. Designer clothes. For Daniel. What is this? Sarah asked, staring at the expensive fabric. He needed clothes. He has clothes. He needed better clothes. Jun Suk. These probably cost more than I make in 6 months. I can't accept. He cut her off with a kiss, quick and firm. They're for Daniel, not you. Let me do this. Please. The please broke her. Sarah nodded, blinking back tears she didn't fully understand. Jun Suk pulled her close, tucked her head under his chin, and they stood there in the middle of his expensive penthouse, while Daniel tried on a jacket that probably cost more than her first car. I need to tell you something, Jun-suk said quietly. Sarah's stomach dropped. Okay. My business, the things I do, they're not legal. I'm not a good man, Sarah. I've hurt people, killed people, made decisions that haunt me. I need you to know that before this goes any further. She pulled back to look at him. I know. I've known for weeks. I'm not stupid. Then why are you still here? Because everyone's broken something. Everyone's running from something. You've killed people. But you also bought my son clothes and taught him how to order food and held me when I cried about a husband I lost 18 months ago. She cupped his face, her thumb tracing the scar on his cheek. You're not just one thing, Jun-suk. None of us are. He kissed her again, deeper this time, with a desperation that spoke of years of loneliness finally breaking apart. They made love that night after Daniel fell asleep, slow and careful. Two damaged people finding temporary peace in each other's bodies. Afterward, lying tangled in his sheets, Sarah traced the scars on his back and thought about fate and choice and the strange ways life brings people together. Tell me about him, Jun-suk said. Your husband, Marcus. Sarah smiled sadly. He was good. Really, genuinely good in ways that are rare. He worked as a social worker, helped kids in foster care. He believed in systems and justice and fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Her voice cracked. That's what got him killed. He found something, some connection between a local gang and city officials. He was going to expose it. 2 days later, he was dead. What was the gang? They called themselves the Southside Dragons. Small operation but connected to bigger things. Marcus had documentation, evidence. I tried to find it after he died. But someone got there first. She nodded. When I went to the police, the detective who took my statement was the same man I saw leaving the alley that night. I knew then that whatever Marcus had found was bigger than I could handle. So I took Daniel and ran. Jun-suk was quiet, his mind working through possibilities and connections. Did Marcus ever mention Korean connections? International trafficking? Sarah sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. How did you know that? His expression went carefully blank. Tell me exactly what he said. He mentioned Seoul once. Said the dragons had partners here, that the operation went deeper than anyone thought. He had a name, Victor someone. Victor Chin. That's all I remember. Jun-suk's blood went cold. Victor Chin. One of the most dangerous men in international organized crime. And someone who'd approached Jun-suk 3 years ago about a partnership Jun-suk had refused. Victor didn't forget refusals. Sarah, he said carefully. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Victor Chun is extremely dangerous. If he thinks you have information about his operations. But I don't. I don't know anything. Marcus never told me details. It doesn't matter. The fact that you existed, that you were married to someone digging into his business, that's enough. He grabbed his phone. We need to move you. Tonight. Somewhere safe. Move us where? Jun-suk. You're scaring me. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. A message from Min-ho, short and terrifying. We have a problem. Victor Chen's people are asking about an American woman with a child. They have her old address from the cleaning agency. Jun-suk's face went white. He was already moving, pulling on clothes, making phone calls in rapid Korean. Sarah dressed quickly, her hands shaking, trying not to wake Daniel. What's happening? She demanded. They found you. Victor's people. They're coming. He grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me. I'm gonna get you both out of here. I have a safe house in Busan. You'll go there with Min-ho. You'll be protected. What about you? I'm going to have a conversation with Victor Chun about respecting boundaries. The cold finality in his voice terrified her. Jun-suk, please. Don't do anything stupid. He kissed her forehead. I'm not losing you. Not to him. Not to anyone. Now go wake Daniel. We have maybe an hour. The next 60 minutes were chaos. Sarah and Daniel were hustled into a car with Min-ho and 2 other men who treated them with careful respect. Jun-suk stood in his driveway, watching them leave, his expression carved from stone. Sarah looked back through the rear window, memorizing his face, terrified it might be the last time she saw him alive. He'll be okay, Min-ho said quietly. Jun-suk doesn't lose. It's not in his nature. There's a first time for everything. Sarah whispered, and held Daniel closer as Sol disappeared behind them. What happened next will shock you. Don't go anywhere. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the explosive confrontation that changes everything. The safe house in Busan was small and comfortable, perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. Sarah paced the living room while Daniel slept upstairs, her phone clutched in her hand, waiting for news. Minho sat by the window with a gun in his lap, watching the road. How long have you worked for him? Sarah asked. 23 years. Since we were boys stealing bread from market stalls. Is he going to die tonight? Minho considered lying, then decided she deserved the truth. Maybe. Victor Chun isn't reasonable. He's a mad dog dressed in expensive suits. But Jun-suk is smart, and he's motivated in ways I've never seen before. He looked at her. That's because of you. I don't know if I should thank you or curse you for that. He told me once that love was weakness. He was wrong. Love is the most dangerous thing in the world when wielded by a man with nothing left to lose. In Seoul, in a warehouse near the Han River, Kang Jun-suk walked into what might be his last meeting. Victor Chun sat at a table surrounded by 6 armed men, his smile sharp as broken glass. Kang Jun-suk, the man who doesn't compromise. To what do I owe the pleasure? The woman you're looking for is under my protection. Victor's smile widened. Really? The American with the brat? I didn't realize you developed such humanitarian interests. Her husband was killed by your people. She has no information, no evidence, nothing that threatens you. Let it go. Can't do that. She might not have documentation now, but memories are dangerous. What if she remembers something later? Tell someone? No. Better to clean up loose ends. Victor stood, circling Jun-suk like a shark. Unless you're willing to trade. What do you want? Partnership. Your distribution network in exchange for the woman's life. And maybe you throw in some other concessions. I'm feeling generous tonight. Jun-suk had built his empire on never backing down, never compromising. His father's voice echoed in his head. Never love what can be taken from you. But standing in that warehouse, thinking about Sarah's smile and Daniel's laugh and the possibility of a life that meant something beyond power and fear, he realized his father had been wrong about everything that mattered. No, he said quietly. Victor's expression went cold. No, I don't negotiate with threats against people I care about. So here's my counteroffer. You leave her alone permanently, or I destroy every operation you have in Southeast Asia. I burn your trafficking routes. I expose your government contacts. I make your name toxic. Jun-suk stepped closer, his voice dropping to something deadly. I've spent 30 years building power for no particular reason. Turns out having a reason makes me much more dangerous. You'd start a war over a woman? I'd end a world over that woman. The warehouse went silent. Victor's men shifted nervously. No one had ever spoken to Victor Chun like that and walked away. But Jun-suk stood there, unflinching, and Victor saw something in his eyes that gave him pause. Madness maybe, or worse, purpose. You love her, Victor said almost wonderingly. The great Kang Jun-suk, the man made of ice, is in love. How unexpected. Do we have a deal or not? Victor considered. Jun-suk's network was valuable, but going to war with him would be expensive and bloody. And there was something about the man standing before him that suggested death wouldn't be the worst thing that could happen if Victor pushed. Fine. The woman lives. But you owe me a favor. Someday, somewhere, I'm gonna call it in. Acceptable. They shook hands, and Jun-suk walked out of that warehouse knowing he'd just mortgaged his future. But when his phone rang and he heard Sarah's voice, shaky with relief, he couldn't bring himself to care. It's done, he said. You're safe. Both of you. Where are you? Coming to you. I'll be there by dawn. He drove through the night, soul disappearing in his rearview mirror, and thought about the man he'd been versus the man he was becoming. 30 years of believing emotions were weakness, of treating people as transactions, of measuring life in money and fear. All of it had been a waste. All of it had been running from the only thing that made existence bearable. Dawn was breaking over the ocean when he finally pulled up to the safe house. Sarah was standing on the porch, wrapped in one of his jackets that she must have grabbed before leaving Seoul. The moment she saw him, she ran. He caught her halfway down the driveway, lifted her off her feet, buried his face in her neck and breathed her in like oxygen after drowning. I thought. Her voice broke. Minho wouldn't tell me anything. I thought you were dead. Takes more than Victor-chan to kill me. He set her down, cupped her face. I need to tell you something. Okay. I love you. I don't know when it happened or how. Maybe that first night when you broke the glass and didn't beg. Maybe when I saw you with Daniel. Maybe every moment in between. But I love you, and I'm not apologizing for it or hiding it or pretending I don't. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I can't believe I'm hearing this from a man who said he doesn't date black women. That man was an idiot. That man didn't know you existed. That man was hiding behind prejudice because he was too scared to admit he was empty. He kissed her softly. You filled something in me I didn't know was hollow. You and Daniel. You made me want to be better than what I was raised to be. I love you too, she whispered. God help me. I love you too. They stood there in the rising sun. Two broken people who'd found each other across oceans and circumstances. And for the first time in years, Jun-suk felt something like hope. Inside, Daniel was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with Minho, who was teaching him Korean curse words, despite Sarah's explicit instructions not to. Mama! Daniel jumped down and ran to her. Mr. Kong is here. Are we going home? Sarah looked at Jun-suk, the question unspoken. Where was home now? Jun-suk crouched down to Daniel's level. How would you feel about living with me? You and your mom. Properly. Not just cleaning nights but all the time. Daniel's eyes went wide. Really? Forever? If your mom agrees, yes. Forever. Can I have the room with the big window? Jun-suk laughed, the sound rusty and genuine. You can have whatever room you want. Daniel threw his arms around Jun-suk's neck, and something in the hardened crime boss's chest cracked wide open. He held the boy carefully, like something precious and fragile, and met Sarah's eyes over Daniel's shoulder. She was crying, smiling, nodding. Okay, she said. Okay, yes, let's go home. The next few months were an education in becoming a family. Jun-suk had never lived with anyone beyond guards and staff. Suddenly his penthouse was full of Daniel's toys, Sarah's books, the smell of cooking and laughter and life. It was messy and loud and nothing like the controlled silence he'd maintained for decades. It was perfect. He started teaching Daniel Korean properly, sitting with him after dinner to practice characters. Sarah would watch them from the kitchen, her heart full of this impossible love she'd stumbled into. Jun-suk started coming home earlier, canceling meetings that used to be non-negotiable because Daniel had a school play or Sarah wanted to try a new recipe. You're getting soft, Minho observed one evening, watching Jun-suk help Daniel build a blanket fort in the living room. Probably, Jun-suk agreed, not caring at all. The men are talking. They don't know how to handle this version of you. Let them talk. I'm still dangerous when I need to be. I just have better reasons now. And he proved it 2 weeks later when one of his lower-level associates made a crude comment about Sarah in front of him. Jun-suk didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten, just looked at the man with such cold fury that everyone in the room felt the temperature drop. Say her name again, Jun-suk said quietly. I dare you. The man went pale. Boss, I didn't mean. Out. You're done. If I see your face anywhere near my business or my family, they won't find your body. The message spread quickly. Kong Jun-suk was still the man they feared, but now he had something to protect, which made him infinitely more dangerous. Respect for Sarah and Daniel became non-negotiable. Anyone who forgot that learned why crossing Jun-suk was a fatal mistake. But Sarah was also changing him in ways that went deeper than just protection. He started questioning the business itself, the violence and corruption he'd accepted as necessary. One night, lying in bed with her head on his chest, she asked the question he'd been avoiding. How many people have you killed? He could have lied, should have lied. Instead, 43, that I pulled the trigger on personally. More if you count orders I gave. She was quiet for a long moment. Do you regret it? Some. The ones who deserved it, no. The ones who were just in the wrong place, yes. Every day. Can you stop? The killing, the business. Not completely. Not yet. But I can scale back. Transition to legitimate operations. It'll take time. How much time? 5 years maybe. Some things you can't just walk away from. Victor Chen's favor is still hanging over us. There are debts, obligations. But I'm working on it. He tilted her chin up to look at him. I'm trying to be the man Daniel thinks I am. The man you deserve. I don't need you to be perfect, Jun-suk. I just need you to try. He kissed her then, slow and deep, and they made love with the kind of desperate tenderness that comes from knowing how close they'd come to never having this at all. If this story is touching your heart, show us some love. Hit that like button and comment below what you think about Jun-suk's transformation. Your support means everything. 6 months after Sarah moved in, Jun-suk proposed. Not with fanfare or expensive restaurants, but on a random Tuesday evening while she was washing dishes and he was helping Daniel with homework. He just walked up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist and said, "Marry me." Sarah froze, dish soap dripping from her hands. "What? Marry me? I want Daniel to be legally mine. I want you to have my name. I want to wake up 50 years from now knowing you're still here." She turned in his arms, searching his face. "Are you sure? This life you're building with us. It's so different from everything you were. That's exactly why I want it. You make me want to be different, better. Someone Daniel can be proud of. Someone you can trust." He pulled a ring from his pocket, simple and elegant. "I don't deserve you. I know that. But I'm selfish enough to ask anyway." "Yes," Sarah whispered, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, you idiot. Yes." Daniel looked up from his homework. "Does this mean Mr. Kong is going to be my dad?" Jun-suk knelt beside him. "If you want me to be. I know I can't replace your father. Marcus was a good man, a hero. I'm not asking you to forget him. But I love your mom, and I love you, and I'd be honored to be your dad too." Daniel thought about it seriously, his small face scrunched in concentration. Then he threw his arms around Jun-suk's neck. "Okay, you can be my dad. But you have to teach me more Korean and take me to that robot museum you promised." "Deal," Jun-suk said, his voice rough with emotion. They married 3 months later in a small ceremony. Just Minho, a few trusted friends, and Daniel as the ring bearer wearing a suit that made him look like a tiny businessman. Sarah wore a simple white dress and flowers in her hair. Jun-suk wore black and cried when she walked down the aisle, not caring who saw. "I never thought I'd have this," he told her during their first dance. "Family, love, something worth more than power. You always had the capacity for it," Sarah said. "You just needed a reason to let it out. You're my reason. You and Daniel. Everything else is just details." Life settled into a new rhythm. Jun-suk slowly dismantled the more violent aspects of his empire, transitioning to legitimate businesses. Real estate, technology investments, restaurants. It wasn't clean or easy. There were men who resented the changes, who thought he'd gone soft. There were threats, attempts to undermine him. But Jun-suk had spent 30 years building fear into his name, and that didn't evaporate overnight. He dealt with dissent swiftly and permanently, until everyone understood that while he was changing, he was still not a man to cross. Daniel thrived. He learned Korean fluently, made friends at his expensive new school, called Jun-suk Dad without hesitation. Sometimes Sarah would catch Jun-suk watching the boy with an expression of wonder, like he couldn't quite believe this was his life now. "What are you thinking?" she asked one evening, finding him in Daniel's doorway watching the boy sleep. "That I almost missed this. If I'd sent you away that first night, if I'd let my prejudice win, I would have missed everything that matters." He pulled her close. "Your husband was investigating Victor Chen's operation. The work he was doing, the evil he was trying to expose, it led you here, to me, to this life. Sometimes I think maybe he'd forgive me for loving you, because I'm trying to be the kind of man who deserves what he died fighting for." Sarah kissed him softly. "Marcus would have liked you, the you that you're becoming. He believed people could change. I'm changing because of you. No, you're changing because you chose to. I just gave you a reason to want to." 2 years after they married, Victor Chen called in his favor. Jun-suk had been expecting it, dreading it, preparing for it. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarah was at Daniel's school play. Jun-suk answered his phone already knowing who it was. "It's time," Victor said without preamble. "I need you to move something through your port connections. One shipment. No questions asked. What's in it? Nothing that concerns you. One shipment, Jun-suk. Then we're even." Jun-suk knew what kind of things Victor moved. Weapons, drugs, people. His stomach turned. "I have a family now. Children who look up to me. I can't. You made a deal. Your woman's life for a favor. I'm calling it in. Unless you want to renegotiate, maybe I could visit that lovely wife of yours. Meet your son properly." The threat was clear. Jun-suk's hand tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. "When?" "Next week. I'll send details. Pleasure doing business with you." The line went dead. Jun-suk sat in his office, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of his past pressing down on his present. He could do this. Move one shipment, keep his family safe, move on with his life. But he'd be complicit in whatever horror Victor was trafficking. The man he was becoming, the father Daniel deserved, that man couldn't do this. When Sarah came home that evening, chattering about Daniel's performance, she found Jun-suk on the balcony, his expression carved from stone. "What happened?" she asked immediately. He told her everything. The deal, the favor, Victor's call. When he finished, Sarah was silent for a long time. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. "I don't know. If I refuse, he'll come after you. After Daniel. If I agree, I become everything I've been trying not to be." Sarah took his hand. "Then we fight. Together. You've spent 2 years building legitimate power. You have connections, allies, evidence on Victor's operations. Use it. Go to the authorities. Burn his empire before he can touch ours. It's risky, dangerous. So is letting him control us for the rest of our lives." She cupped his face. "You told me once that love made you dangerous. Prove it. Protect your family by ending the threat, not by feeding it." Jun-suk looked at his wife. This woman who'd walked into his life and refused to let him hide behind fear and prejudice. And realized she was right. He'd spent 30 years building power. Time to use it for something that mattered. The next week was a carefully orchestrated disaster for Victor Chun. Jun-suk used every connection he'd built, every piece of leverage he had. Evidence of Victor's trafficking operations went to multiple law enforcement agencies simultaneously. Financial records, shipping manifests, names of corrupted officials. All of it released like a flood. Victor's empire didn't just crack. It shattered. The retaliation was swift. Victor sent men to Seoul, to Jun-suk's businesses, to his home. But Jun-suk had prepared for this. Sarah and Daniel were in a secure location with Minho and 20 armed guards. Jun-suk's own people, men who'd stood with him for decades, fought back with the kind of organized violence that reminded everyone why crossing Kong Jun-suk had always been a death sentence. The war lasted 72 hours. 3 days of bullets and blood and burning, of phone calls and threats and negotiations. When the dust settled, Victor Chun was in custody in Hong Kong, his operations dismantled, his people scattered, and Jun-suk was standing in his penthouse, blood on his suit, exhausted and alive. Sarah came home that evening with Daniel, who'd been told they were on a special vacation. The boy ran to Jun-suk immediately. "Dad, we saw dolphins. They jumped really high." Jun-suk picked him up despite his aching body, held him close. "That's amazing. Tell me everything." While Daniel chattered about dolphins and boats, Sarah met Jun-suk's eyes over their son's head. He looked exhausted, haunted, but also free in a way she'd never seen. "Is it over?" she mouthed. He nodded. "It's over." That night, after Daniel was asleep, they lay tangled together in bed, and Sarah traced the new bruises on Jun-suk's ribs. "No more?" she asked quietly. "No more. Victor's done. I've sold off the last of the illegal operations. From here on, it's just legitimate business." He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. "I kept my promise. I became the man you and Daniel needed." "You became the man you needed," Sarah corrected. "We just gave you a reason to try." "Thank you," he whispered, "for not giving up on me, for showing me that love isn't weakness, for teaching me that the heart doesn't see color, it recognizes truth." They made love slowly, carefully, two people who'd fought wars to keep each other. And in the aftermath, wrapped in the safety of their home and their love, Jun-suk finally understood what his father had gotten wrong. Love wasn't weakness. It was the only thing worth being strong for. 5 years later, Daniel was 10 years old and fluent in Korean and English, brilliant and kind, growing up between two worlds and comfortable in both. Jun-suk's business empire was entirely legitimate now, built on real estate and technology, employing hundreds of people in fair conditions. He'd even started a foundation in Marcus Bennett's name, helping at-risk youth and fighting corruption. Sarah had gone back to school, was finishing a degree in social work, continuing the fight her first husband had started but in safer ways. She and Jun-suk had another child, a daughter named Grace who had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn determination. One evening, during a family dinner, Daniel asked a question that made everyone pause. "Dad, do you remember when you said you don't date black women?" The table went silent. Grace was too young to understand, but Sarah's eyes met Jun-suk's, curious how he'd handle this. Jun-suk set down his chopsticks, thought carefully. "Yes, I remember. I said something ignorant and hurtful because I was scared and empty and hiding behind prejudice instead of admitting I didn't know how to love anyone. But you love Mom, and she's black. I do love your mom, more than anything except you and your sister. And she taught me that the person who said that stupid thing wasn't who I wanted to be. Your mom. And you both showed me that love isn't about what someone looks like or where they come from. It's about who they are, how they make you feel, what they inspire you to become." Daniel considered this seriously. "So you were wrong. Completely wrong. Stupidly, embarrassingly wrong. It's okay. I was wrong about vegetables once too." The adults laughed, the tension breaking. Jun-suk caught Sarah's eye, saw the love and pride there, and felt his heart swell with gratitude for this life he'd stumbled into, this family he'd never known he needed. That night, after the children were asleep, Jun-suk and Sarah stood on their balcony overlooking Seoul, the city that had brought them together in the most unlikely way. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Staying with me? Building this life?" Sarah leaned against him, comfortable and content. "Never. Not even once. You. My only regret is every moment before I met you. Everything else has been worth it." He kissed the top of her head. "You saved me, you know, from becoming a monster, from dying empty and alone. We saved each other. I was running from ghosts, and you were hiding from your own humanity. We met in the middle and built something better than either of us could have managed alone." "The heart doesn't see color," Jun-suk said softly, echoing words he'd heard once and finally understood. "It recognizes truth. And what truth did your heart recognize in me?" He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her face. "That you were home. That love isn't weakness. It's courage. That the man I was raised to be wasn't the man I needed to become. That prejudice is just fear wearing a mask. And real strength is choosing to be better than what you were taught." Sarah kissed him then, deep and slow. A kiss that tasted like promise and future and everything they'd fought for. When they finally broke apart, she smiled. "I love you, Kang Jun-suk, the man who didn't date black women until he met one who changed everything. I love you, Sarah Bennett Kang, the woman who showed me that hearts don't see color, they recognize truth. And you were the truest thing I ever found." They stood there under Seoul stars, this impossible family built from prejudice overcome and love chosen. And if anyone had told them 5 years ago that this was where they'd end up, neither would have believed it. But here they were, proof that people can change, that love can overcome ignorance, that the heart, when given permission, knows exactly what it needs. So what do you think? Could you have forgiven someone who started with such prejudice? Do you believe people can truly change? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories about love, redemption, and the courage to become better than we were. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that transformation is possible, that love can break down walls we build around our hearts, and that sometimes the most unlikely people teach us the most important lessons. Thank you for watching, and remember, the heart doesn't see color. It recognizes truth, and truth has a way of finding us when we're brave enough to let it in.